What up, traders? What up, investors? Today we're going to be looking at some Bill Ackman's investment ideas. We talked about him a ways back when he made a particular bet on the overall pandemic and netted a couple $1 billion from that, basically putting him in the honorably Wall Street Bets Hall of Fame. If you don't know how Bill Ackman is, he comes on CNBC a lot. He is basically a hedge fund manager for Pershing Square Capital Management, and he's been in the game for quite some time. He's made some very notable bets. He bet on JCPenney recovery. This is many years ago. He bet against Herbalife. For some reason, that company's still around, but now he still actively runs his portfolio, and we're going to be taking a look at that here in a second. So one of his biggest holdings, as you know, or you may not know, is actually in Lowe's currently. So Lowe's is about 16% of his weight. He had a substantial position in Chipotle. I think he's held Chipotle for quite some time. We can also look at the reduction. Again, we're only able to get these forms of his filings every quarter. So every 4 months, you can kind of see that he reduced his overall position size in Chipotle. Again, we don't know at what time frame from December to the beginning, the end of March. And then potentially with April, May, we had a pretty big run up because everyone knows that Chipotle has netted well over $1,000 stock price again. So, excuse me, this is looking at the overall positions he currently has. We'll go look back at here. We're going to particularly talk about Lowe's. We can talk about Berkshire, Allergan. We can look at that. We can look at Chipotle. Starbucks is one we kind of talked about as well. But it's basically a lot of his investments are within the restaurants and real estate and asset management stuff, with a travel and leisure of Hilton Hotels Holding. So we're just going to kind of dive into basically the four larger positions. We can look at Berkshire, but we know that it's a huge conglomerate of different things, so it's going to be kind of hard to price that out. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the very first one. So we looked into CMG. So this one has had a pretty awesome recovery. Again, we don't know what time he sold this in the first quarter of this year, but around the end here, which is right here, was the end of the first quarter in 2020. Again, it's had a pretty big swing. If we pump this out to the weekly chart, it has had a pretty enormous run. I believe he got into it around 17 and 18 due to the overall E. coli outbreak within their restaurants on multiple locations. Since then, they have changed on how they prep food, on how they handle food, how they manufacture food, and the whole supply chain of things. Ever since then, basically clearing of that since the 2018 low, it's just been riding up the 21 exponential moving average, having a couple of hiccups here, and then of course since recently, due to the pullback, literally went down to $417-ish, and then literally made a V shape here on the weekly chart, and now it is pumping up to all-time highs with a very strong last quarter, indicating that they're actually making more money due to people working from home, people staying inside and ordering delivery and takeout, and they're just making gangbusters over there. That being said, Bill Ackman did lower his stake in that company, which is, we don't know for whatever reason, he doesn't have to tell us. His forte. Then we can also look at Lowe's. So Lowe's, Home Depot, what kind of person how you swing. This had a really good quarter, strong online sales. They're making a really strong transition to update a lot of their technologies within the business. Again, as you know as well, or you may not, is that Lowe's and Home Depot, their special season is the gardening season. That is some of the higher margins they have on everything from mulch to potted plants to anything regarding of revamping your interior or exterior of your house, in the sense of tools and different various things that people need to do that. And they are basically the two major players in the business that allow folks to do different various home improvements to their house or their living situations. So that being said, it's pretty close to hitting back to where it was beginning of the year, which is a high at 126. We can kind of look at here on the weekly chart. Again, this is a weekly chart, but this goes back 20 years. So if we just look back and basically since 15, let's actually change this. I'm sorry, it's a little too much information. It's been in a crazy trading range between like the 100s and then kind of breaking out a little bit, but it's having these huge waves here, and then coming back down, huge waves, and then kind of right up, and then of course a huge crash down, and then a nice V-shaped recovery, as well as on the day. This is the weekly chart. Going back to the daily chart here, we can kind of see here that it's trading really close to the 21 exponential moving average, hovering around the 8 and 5 exponential moving average here as well. Continue trying to ride this momentum side up, breaking really well through the 200 exponential moving average. So this kind of broke through it, said hello, came back down, gave it a big kiss on the cheek, and then continues flying higher. Again, for upward resistance, we're looking at probably 126. So let's make that indication there. For support, we're going to be looking down to the 21. So it's going to be initially around the 110 level. And then I'm going to flip you over to this chart. And again, very short-term support would be around 115. If it kind of slowly comes back to that. If it breaks the 115, the 106, 107 level is going to come into play here as well, with the 200 exponential moving average. Unless it has a complete red day like this over here, it could have a pretty strong momentum and kick through it. The RSI is actually very high on this one. This is going to give it more strength and more pushing power. Momentum somewhat flat, same with the squeeze, but the volume oscillator is indicating really strong, basically what the RSI is saying, potential for higher movement. So looking at 126 to be a pretty good price target within the near-term future. But again, we don't have a crystal ball here. We can't make predictions. We just have to wait on what the price action gives us, and we trade off that. So that's Lowe's in a nutshell. I wanted to look at actually one that's kind of been beaten up, which I haven't actually ever traded, I don't believe. I had to look it up. Was this Howard Hughes Corporation? So it's HHC. And this is a straight real estate play. And of course, this has been hit pretty substantial. Again, I don't know. I know who Howard Hughes is. I know he owns multiple buildings, but back in the day, bought multiple buildings, but I don't know what he particular owns. You know what I'm saying? That being said, again, if we're looking at the moving averages and the trends and so forth, is of course we had down like everything else in the market, but now it's just kind of been trading sideways. So this is going to fall less of a V shape and more of an L shape bottom, where we just fell, and then we're just going to continue trading sideways until another shoe drops or someone gives us a rope to climb up above the 21. You can see here we failed multiple times here, 1, 2, 3, call it 3 times here at the 21. Looking for some overhead resistance at basically, let's call it $50. And then course downward support is looking at around the 44 to 43 level. We'll just put it here at the lower tier, at or below. Again, I don't know anything of the fundamental side of this business, but real estate has been hit with the overall market, in particular if they own some corporate real estate, because a lot of companies are switching. A lot of them work from home. Some of them are just not able to pay their bills, especially with restaurants and businesses really being stretched and feeling like the strain on not having the consumers or the people sitting not even able to come into the restaurants to get food and so forth. So we'll see what happens there for Howard Hughes Company. Another one we wanted to talk about. Just had a trade execute there. Sorry. So another position that he owns about 10% of his portfolio in is Starbucks. He did reduce a little bit of this, I believe, or he added to it on the last quarter. So again, this could have been this downward trend. He added to it. We are seeing this very close here. Some really strong overhead resistance at the 200 exponential moving average. Again, it's going to be around $79 to $80. And then some ongoing support here at 71. It's just kind of trading sideways. This is kind of more like a U, maybe it could be a W if it goes lower, recovery, in the sense of it's just kind of waiting for the economy to potentially start opening up, more states go into phase 2 or 3, or being more loose on what restaurants can hold. And of course, this is going to trickle down to Starbucks and having people and patrons being able to come back in and get their $7 Frappuccino. Yeah, that's basically my 2 cents. I'm not a Starbucks kind of guy. I love coffee, but I don't like Starbucks coffee. I'm kind of ranting here. I apologize. So again, this is the bull and bear case. Again, breaking above 79.80, closing above it, and then the bear case would be the 5 and 8 exponential moving averages are going to come lower, breaking through the 21, because you can see the 21 has been pretty strong support here. The 8 and 5 really haven't touched it or really crossed through it, kind of bouncing in and around it again within a very tight range. I can actually draw you guys a lovely little box to kind of highlight what I mean by this trading range. So this is the trading range that we're talking about here, looking for a breakout or a break lower. So be mindful of that if you're trading or even in Starbucks. And let's do Hilton Holding. So they're actually, I actually owned a little bit of Marriott stock back in the day. So this looks very similar to what we're just looking at here. This is probably just looking at a potential, seeing how the economy kind of rebounds and opens back up, trading in a very, like an L-shaped kind of recovery here. We're not above the 200, not really near it, but we're having some ongoing resistance here around $80, so we can draw that line here, and then ongoing support around 63. Let's see, there we go. The 8 and 5 kind of just crossed through the 21, which is great. That's a sign of indication of more buying potential, people getting into the stock again, and additionally some upward strength, potentially the force through to break above the $80 level and potentially try to test the 200 potentially in the next 3 or 4 weeks or even sooner. If you're looking down further in the chart, RSI is kind of flat. It just kind of tilted lower. That was silly. Momentum is fair. This is not something I'd be running out and like, I'm going to miss this trade. It's going to be a very slow mover. I think they kind of substantially cut their dividend. We just had the RSI switch here on the weekly chart. Looking for potential high again. That really key around 81 to 82 could be a huge indication to try to break out and break above it. We are currently trying to get above the 200 exponential moving average on the weekly chart here. To try to close above this would be a pretty good sign. I like that the parabolic SAR on the weekly chart has already switched over. Was the switched over on? Yeah, it was already switched over on the daily chart. But the weekly chart being this, most likely being a more longer term trade, because it doesn't really move substantially up or down unless there's a pandemic going on. It moves substantially down. But that being said, we need to see more information out in the market to see if people are going back on vacation, what are they doing, how are they spending their money, and just being mindful of that. So that being said, those are basically stocks that we are looking at here. Again, this is Bill Ackman's majority stakeholders. Oh, I'm sorry. We literally forgot the elegant. My B. So this one's performing. I actually like this one. This looks interesting. I kind of want to do a quick fib here because it looks pretty interesting. Yeah, failed at the 78.6 percentile. So we're going to create a at or above there. And then this is interesting too because the 618 percentile move lines up exactly with the 21 exponential moving average for some ongoing support if it bounces lower. So what we'll be looking for, again, earnings are coming out today after the bell for a potential kick higher or lower. Again, where does earnings saying for this? Oh, they don't have a really good weeklies for this stock, so it's going to be hard to predict. But the nearest term is saying plus or minus $7. So give it plus or minus $5 where we're currently at. So that could hit the 85 marker, which is the bull case, and then this would be the 79, which would be below the 21 and so forth. So coming into the 34 exponential moving average would be around 77 to 76 level due to the 34 and the 200 exponential moving average kind of being there for support to the downside. Again, like we know, we do not have a crystal ball here on the channel. I don't think anyone does, neither does Bill Ackman. But again, be very mindful, especially when you're trading options or anything in stock around earnings. It's a complete coin flip. The RSI was trying to print up, but if this breaks through this little purple dot here, this is going to switch to be negative. But again, with earnings on the horizon being in 4 hours from now, it could be a complete coin flip. So be very mindful of that. I like that it has made a better recovery than a lot of other stocks. I'm not very well versed in these life science applied diagnostics companies, so looking on the strictly chart, just kind of work around these parameters of the bull and bear case. Again, guys, this is Bill Ackman's overall portfolio that he's holding for Pershing Square, and that value is around $6.57 billion. And that's a huge, substantial position in a lot of huge companies like Lowe's, Hilton, Chipotle, and Starbucks. Thank you again, everyone, for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to join our fantastic Discord chat, you can do that by the chat down below, by just joining, completely free. And if you want to help support the channel, we also have a Patreon there for some extra bonus stuff. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Have a great trading. Peace.